In part two of our interview with Dan Shapiro, we get possibly one of the best guides of how to run meetings from Dan's fourth startup, which has hit the hecto-million revenue mark, a feat very few entrepreneurs can claim. Not only does Dan provide his incredible wisdom from building multiple startups, including one that was sold to Google in 6 months. Yes, 6 months. He provides possibly the best answer to the last question we always ask. Thank you for listening to Startup Wins. I'm Brandon Ah, your host, and we bring you some of the best founders, VCs, and operator experts to give you all the optimal advice needed to build your next unicorn or impactful startup. Do you find like that has really maximized your ability? Because I mean, not all friends who run startups are surrounded with assistants, or, you know, nowadays we could use AI agents maybe to possibly perform those functions. But let's get to the meetings question maybe second. But how has it been with all these folks? And did you plan that out? Like, did you think, or has it been ad hoc where you're just bringing on people to make sure you're maximizing everything?
So when I started on Tela, my co-founder Charles and I were talking about this. There were three co-founders, me, Brian, and Charles. Brian came a little later, and I had a conversation with Charles very early on, and he said, "So, what's your I made it. I'm a big fancy tech executive now. Greatest dream." And I said, "An assistant who manages my schedule." And I said, "What about you?" He said, "A private bathroom." I do have an assistant, spends about 5-10 hours a week on scheduling. For me, it's because I am such a scatterbrain. I have always had chaos on my schedule that has negatively impacted me in the company just because I'm bad at it. I screw up the time zone conversions. I forget to put the thing on there. I don't change it right, whatever. I don't have the attention to detail for that particular thing. And that winds up being expensive. So it's a luxury that I choose to invest in for myself. The thing is, nowadays, I could do it with an AI agent. I'm a little reluctant to, only because at a certain level, you wind up working with people who have a degree of self-importance where the feeling of talking to somebody important is a thing. And so if I'm meeting with the CEOs of big companies, if I'm meeting with, fancy pants investors, whatever, it's actually, delegating to the AI assistant or doing it myself means the meeting isn't as well put together. It means that I might not get the meeting. It means that it might be, that they sort of wind up pushing for it to be on their terms, like I have to fly to them or, travel, whatever. Having somebody who's like, "I'm so sorry, I wish I could help you. I'm just trying to deal with Mr. Shapiro's schedule," solves a lot of problems for those sorts of things. So it is a luxury, but it's one that I find very important. And I mean, I'll give you an example where I saw that in stark relief. Not enough people have heard of the Big Five personality disorder. Most folks have heard of Myers-Briggs. Myers-Briggs is like the PR we're going to sell you consulting version. The Big Five personality disorder is the actual researchers doing actual research have actually proven things version. So if you like Myers-Briggs, you love Big Five personality disorder because it's real. For example, Myers-Briggs, everything is good and everyone's a special snowflake. Big Five personality disorders, some of the things are bad and you don't want them. And you should recognize if you have some of those negative personality traits and avoid them. It's not everybody's wonderful. It's here are things to worry about. So in any, one of them, I think they came up with a better negative emotional externality is the name they came up, but it used to be called neuroticism, which is really what one of them is. I and my executive team for a retreat to the Big Five personality disorder. For the most part, it wasn't too surprising. On extroversion, you had the sales people and me were over on the extroverted side, and the financial people were more on the introverted side. And you kind of went through all the different ones. But it was funny because there's one of them that's keep your act together. I remember what it's well organized, something like that. And the entire executive team was over on one side, and there I was all alone on the other. And my team was like, "Dan, what are you even talking about? This sounds like you lose things all the time and you don't have your act together and you don't follow through. And that's not our experience of you at all." And I'm like, "That's because I got all of you." I hired a team that shores up my weaknesses. That plus decades of fighting against the sort of, whatever. I've had the conversation and, about ADHD, and no, I don't qualify for a diagnosis. And I was like, okay, but I'm definitely somewhere on that, on that that continuum. And at some level, it's like, okay, that's who you are, and there's strengths and weaknesses that come with that. Now, how do you build a set of coping strategies to make up for the challenges there? Some of that coping is the people who you choose to work with, right? If you're technical, hire some people who have business strengths rather than technical. If you tend to be disorganized, hire people who are really organized. So build out a team that strengthens your weaknesses.
Yeah, no, 100%. Actually, as I listen to you, and we'll get to the meetings question here in a second, you remind me a lot of this Yale professor. I think his name was Craig Wright or something like that, where he analyzed geniuses. He analyzed the genesis of how they became who they are. And honestly, your personality traits are a lot that he described in the book. And so while it might not be organized, it might not be necessarily the typical, what is it, the personality A or whatever it is, geniuses operate in kind of that ADHD fashion, or they're kind of all over the place because they're thinking about things in such complex ways. And then, obviously you have to put it down. You have to organize it to some way that makes sense to the rest of the team or whatever the case may be. But maybe that's where you're at, is you're in this chaotic state and whatever the case may be. But anyway, just to give you a little bit of feedback in case that helps the ego.
That's very kind. I am the child of two professors. My brother's a professor. The absent-minded professor thing definitely describes probably more my dad than my mom. Not so absent-minded, but and I know plenty of geniuses. I do not count myself among them, but I also know plenty of people who've been very successful with some of the same scatterbrained and disorganized challenges I have. Many of whom have been role models for me to figure out how to manage it.
Well, I forgot to mention this earlier when you first mentioned you're the son of two professors, but I don't know if you know Minnie Ingersoll. She's a VC down in LA. Her firm is called 10110 Ventures. Well, her father is the professor at Caltech, and her mother is a professor at USC, and she's had this glorious career, all the way up to her current capacity in VC. And I would argue I've always argued that children of teachers are amazing. Like they're always, they think in ways that, I mean, come on, you had teachers as parents. Like, you get first rights to their amazing abilities to be didactic in a lot of ways. And so I think professors probably fall on the same line. So maybe that's part of who you are.
There was a lot of learning around the dinner table. Much of which is directly relevant to my job today. My dad was a professor of computer science, but my mom is a professor of speech and communications, and she specialized in organizational communications. And they did research together. So, like computer-mediated communications, what's more effective if you have a team that's working on a project where everybody can communicate with everybody, or with everybody can only communicate with the leader, and all conversation has to go through the leader. And, in the 80s with early computer terminals, this was novel that you could do this kind of research by having people communicate with email and messages in order to see what the impact would be on their business. So like they created much of the early research around that, and I get to hear from the dinner table. So I absolutely owe a massive debt to them in terms of learning and understanding what we're doing. And I mean, even more directly and somewhat, and it's remarkable how it came together in the 80s, when I was junior high school. My mom was using a book called Influence by Robert Cialdini in one of her classes. And I don't remember if she recommended it or I picked it up, but I thought it was wild. And it's been a go-to for me to understand principles of marketing, principles of product design, principles of negotiation ever since. And it's one of the books I recommend most to folks. It's very solidly grounded in academic writing, but he's a great writer, and it's full of anecdotes that help sort of understand the principles. Fast forward 40 years, and I was chatting with Ethan at the Generative AI Lab about some of the techniques that I was using for prompting, and I talked about using principles from this book, Influenced by Cialdini, and I made the offhand comment, somebody should replicate the early psychological fundamental research on LLMs. And he said, I think I know somebody who knows, Bob. And so our paper's in preprint now, but now being submitted to journals where Ethan, Bob Cialdini, and Angela Duckworth, who authored Grit, and some other amazing co-authors and I all put together a paper studying exactly that, his original research principles applied to LLMs. So now I'm getting to do research with Bob Cialdini, who is like kind of a little hero of mine since my mom introduced me to his work as a kid.
That's awesome. Well, you make me think of this is honestly a great conversation. I'm really enjoying this. One thing that you made me think of before, it might be a proper segue to meetings, is the whole concept of communication. Because what you're doing in AI is you're communicating to an LLM, or you're communicating to a database of information, and then it's spitting it back to you. But the prompt has to be somewhat precise, or it has to be, it's like you have all these thoughts in your head and then you write down these words and then you hope to God that it returns the proper answer. But I'm speaking of this because in your daily life as a CEO or a founder, you're communicating to your staff and team all the time. And I don't know how you think about this, but I know personally when I write emails, or when I have the meetings, or when you communicate to the outside folks, or even the sales, like some of the most valuable actions and results is proper communicating. You're obviously telling us amazing stuff here about the startup world, but how do you, I mean, maybe it's attributed to your parents. Maybe it's just great parenting. I'm not sure. Maybe it's a great school. Harvey Mudd was obviously an amazing school, but you also seem to have a very inquisitive nature that you kind of explained earlier when you had a kind of a mentor of sorts that you asked all these questions of. But I mean, have you always had this curiosity, or and how did you wrap that into, I guess, this communication style that you have? It's a very confident one. I think you had it since we've known each other. What are some things, like, and as you think about your children, like what are you helping them do, just overall? So I guess it's obviously a very long-winded question, but how do you communicate better, or what do you do to communicate better to your team and everybody else as a startup founder?
I was talking to my wife about, I don't remember what it was, some random, email the tree trimmer or something like that. Some email somebody about something. And she said, "You're so much better at email than I am." And I was like, "No, honey. No, 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 no." Here's the thing. You write a really good email and then you hit send. I write a terrible email and then I spend 20 minutes rewriting it until it's a little bit better than the email that you wrote the first time, and then I hit send. And it takes you 1 minute, and it takes me 20 minutes. I think, and I noodle, and I organize, and and like I work really hard to communicate well and clearly in writing. I have an easier time speaking off the cuff. Almost always the thing I write first is terrible and requires constant revision. I spend way too long on important emails, like way too long. And also every single time that I go, "Oh, no, I'm just going to hit send," I regret it. So regret it. I mean, this happened a few days ago where I was on a plane and the Wi-Fi was spotty and somebody was like, "Dan, here's the draft. We're going to send this to this." And I was like, it looks fine. And I was supposed to edit, like it was a, what was it? Oh no, he put some notes. I cranked out a draft and I was like, is this right? I hit send. Anyway, the person we sent it to misunderstood, got upset. I wound up spending an hour in a meeting to go make things better and paper over. And I was like, I wish I'd spent 20 minutes on the email instead of now spending an hour in this meeting to paper over my cruddy email. So comes from a lot of, I mean, the written one I find really difficult. The verbal one, I've always been a loudmouth, and and I did speech and debate in school, and kind of got some of the confidently speaking about nothing for a while, but it took a long time to sort of distill down and get comfortable in that. And I think there's nothing really but practice in speaking in different forms and forums. Same as writing, like lots of practice. The reason I wrote the book was because I was such a bad writer, and I'm like, well, I'll get better by trying. And I did get much better at writing. It just didn't get any faster, which I wish I had. The book get great reviews and still helps people to this day, even though it's pretty old. There's not a lot in there that's state driven, but every page in there was the result of hours of writing and rewriting and editing. So
Yeah.
still never got fast at it.
Well, on the writing aspect of your answer, I relate. As I'm writing, it feels like 6 or 7 books right now simultaneous because AI can give us the power to do so. But yeah, I won't publish the first one until I read it like 10, 15 times and make sure it's perfect. In terms of the oral skills, funny enough, we share a similarity in debate and speech, and I think that was a great serendipitous moment in my life that someone convinced me to go in there. And the gentleman that I spoke about earlier who went to Rice, he was actually a championship Lincoln Douglas debater, and he went on to Harvard Law. We'll get into the meetings question that I've been like giving the preview to for the last 10 minutes. How do you optimize? You're doing them all day long. Like, what are you doing? I mean, do you think about the optimization of these meetings? Because I personally, when I was at my last organization, I was thinking, God, there's got to be a better, less egoistic, less individual driven, like this person has goals. The rest of the team members who are in the meeting are like, what the hell are we in here for? Process where there's more of a bilateral transaction. Any thoughts on meetings for
Yeah.
your study?
A couple of things. One is I do an hour with my direct reports every other week, and I have them all the same week, which means I have my time to think week and I have my it's really busy with stuff week, which actually helped my sanity a lot. Like that kind of pacing also meant, for travel, I would either schedule it during the not busy week or schedule it during the busy week and be like half-hour one-on-ones and here we go, depending on how it worked. But I do hour-long one-on-ones, and the rule, which I found was just invaluable, was folks needed to send it to me the night before. And when I say the night before, they'd send it sometime like before 8. And then after 8, I would read it. And often I would mark it up and I'd add notes to it. And in many cases, I'd answer the questions, or I'd say, oh, let's not cover this meeting because, this doesn't need to be here for this. This should go to some other place or whatever. We show up for the meeting and we are doing an hour of problem solving. And they already know what's on my mind. I know what's on theirs, and we are cranking through it. So those tend to be really effective uses of time and get a lot done. Then I have my exec team meeting, which is 90 minutes. And by the way, the other thing that I find really useful is for one-on-ones, the first 5 minutes is what I just call feels. And it always takes a little bit of explanation and a few tries to get feels right. Feels isn't, I feel like we should be doing this different strategy. That's a think. Okay, you think we should be doing a different strategy. Great, put that down as an action item. Feels isn't, I feel sad about my salary. Like, action item, I want to review my salary. Feels is for the stuff that's, the way I finally realized I should describe it is, feels means please don't solve this. I'm just informing you. So feels is like, there's been a death in my family and it's really difficult. Feels is like, this work is really demotivating right now and I just have to get through it, but I really hate this part of what we're doing. Feels is like, dang, I am so stoked at what we just accomplished last week. It's feelings, like real feelings.
Yeah.
And my wife's a therapist, so the thoughts versus feelings is something I spend time on the home front. And I found it to be a really useful thing for company life because first, if you don't ask, you won't know. And then you have all sorts of problems that pop up because you never made space to ask. And second, because it's useful to know that like what needs to be problem solved and what explicitly doesn't, and having a line between those. So I found that to be a very useful piece of meeting hygiene. For staff meetings, we run a loose version of something called an L10 meeting, which comes from, I can't remember what the name of the system is for, running your whole company. We didn't adopt it whole heart, but we like this piece. So 5 minutes of everybody giving a, highlight from their week, something interesting, fun, proud, whatever, and then review the major initiatives that we have, review the major metrics that we have as a company and go around and take accountability for up and down. And then we go through a list of issues and I prioritize. Everybody brainstorms into the list very quickly or does it in advance. I prioritize. We go through, we say, here's the issue. Let's identify what we're trying to solve. Let's discuss it. Let's write down a solution. On to the next one. And that format's been really useful. We've adopted it for my executive team, and also many of the teams run those meetings for like the next down version of that with their own team. The last thing I'll say that I love that we started doing, I think we started doing it before we went remote for the pandemic, and we're now about 80% remote. So it's we haven't gone back to that, but it's useful no matter what. Which is we call it 5 minutes to take care of each other. It's one of we have our company cornerstones: hire diverse and amazing people, take care of each other, delight our customers present and future, and build value for ourselves and our company. All in support of a world where anyone can print anything, but cameras can't autofocus very quickly. Oh well, you don't see it. So that take care of each other comes from here, but we call it 5 minutes to take care of each other. And what it means is, when I was at Google, they had this thing of like meetings should end 5 minutes early or 10 minutes early, and they put it on the calendar that it ended early. Who looks at a meeting and goes like, oh, it is 2:50 and our meeting was scheduled to be over at 2:50, so we're done now. Like, nobody looks at the calendar at the end of the meeting to see that it's supposed to. So that was dumb. People are bad at ending meetings early. They're good at being late to meetings, though.
Right.
So we just institutionalized that. So the first 5 minutes to take care of each other. If you're there, socialize. How was your weekend? What's going on? Tell a joke, shoot the breeze, or work quietly and check your email while, for the first 5 minutes is fine. 5 minutes in, you start. And it does a couple things. It gives some lovely room for people to connect. It gives it gives time in a packed schedule for people to go and take a bio break, whatever else. And the thing is, when you tell people that they can be 5 minutes late and then you start 5 minutes in, you start 5 minutes in. We generally never start a meeting late. Like, they always start at 5 minutes in. Off chance that somebody's not there 5 minutes after, like their phone is blowing up and they're like, well, we're, ready to start, and then cancel the meeting or do it without them or whatever else. And so by normalizing the fact that people are going to be a little late, you constrain it to being only a little late and not a lot late. So one thing to steal. That's a good one I'd steal from me.
Yeah, I would definitely say that. No, these are great tips. I definitely a lot of actionable items here. One last question about the startup life and being a founder. Since you said you're so bad at planning, I'm going to ask this. You have the future ahead of you, right? Who knows if it's 10, 20, 30 years more of Glowforge or perhaps other companies in your future path. Do you spend time actually planning for this? Do you do a quarterly retreat for your own self? Do you rethink things? Do you do it with your executive team? Because as you said, you need to plan out the future. So in addition to perhaps even the logistical things or whatever it takes for making sure that you have the right product and whatever else that's involved, do you spend some time reflecting? Well, what's Dan Shapiro's system?
I'm a no to all those things. Not just to the specifics, but no system. I think in the shower in the morning, that's often the best ideas. On a plane, when I go to a conference, and I'm picky about the conferences I choose. It's not just I'm never going to a giant conference with tons of people, rarely, and networking in the hallways. It's small things where I know that people are going to be there and it's high value. It's trips to meetings with customers or investors or whatever else. Those are where the neurons fire and interesting ideas happen. I do run quarterly planning. The reason I said no is because you said, do you do it for yourself? I hate quarterly planning, and I do it because my team finds it valuable. My team finds it necessary. My team wants to get together and spend time, and I want to support them and work the way that it works for them to be effective. That's not the way my brain works. It's not, let's go be creative now. It's not, let's go do strategy now. I'm like during that time, I'm like, okay, I mean, this is stuff I'm doing every day. And now we're doing it all together. All right. It's fun. I love spending time with the team, but that isn't the way that I work in bursts like that. Mm-hmm. And if I'm if I have time, if I'm, taking time on vacation, I'm learning to cook whatever the local dish is. I'm going and exploring some interesting sightseeing, hanging out with the family, and we do a cooking class together everywhere we go. Wind up spending time on the beach together, and then I'll spend an hour or two making sure there's no fires on the home front. I'll get away from it. The Bill Gates would have his think weeks or something like that. I never clicked for me. Not the way I work.
No, I share the same thoughts on that. I also have my best moments during the shower, and you may resonate with this, but while running. long distances. Personally, for me, I get
No, I'm a lazy bum. I never get any never any exercise.
okay.
It's a good day when I have 30 minutes on a treadmill.
That's hilarious. All right, Dan. Well, we have a few last questions. These are just kind of the standard questions that we ask everybody. And one is personal because my cousin unfortunately took her life when she was in her 20s. And I like to ask my very smart guests, how they dealt with those tough times because a lot of people struggle. Your employees, or rather your team members, I like to call them, struggle. There are kids who struggle. And so, as someone who's succeeded for the most part, how are your ways of getting through some of those tough times?
Yeah. I mean, my wife's therapist, like just about everybody, mental health challenges in the family. And, I've seen that. And I've been lucky that for the most part, I've like nothing that's gone to the level of clinical mental health challenges. But I have a therapist. She's fantastic. I met with her this morning. Side note, when I decided who I wanted to work with, and I've worked on and off before. So when I, like a year or two, when I started working with her, one of the things I wanted to know was sort of her experience, her life experience. And it turns out she was a Marine helicopter pilot, which was actually really important to me because the thing I didn't want was to spend 6 months talking to somebody about challenges. And then at the end of that, have them say, I think I figured out the problem. Your job is too stressful. I wanted somebody who was going to be like, cool, cool, cool. That sounds really difficult. Uh-huh. And where I knew that, like, the way I look at my job is, yeah, it's kind of stressful in the abstract. And at the end of the day, I do my job well or poorly, nobody dies as a result. So working with somebody who actually knows what high stakes are helps me feel like I'm working with somebody who has the same perspective as I do on what I do, which is it is very impactful. It does affect people's lives. And at the end of the day, my problems are not they're important to me. And I like to have that perspective in what I do. So having support for mental health, I think, is essential and is so important. I will say for me, I just have this kind of this three-part rule, which is family, my friends and interests, and work. And if those are all great, then great. If one of those is going off the rails, no problem. I've got the other two to keep me straight. If two of those are going off the rails and one of them is okay, all right, I can work with that. It's really stressful and it's really hard, but I can focus on the thing that, I can focus on work when I'm at work and compartmentalize to get me through the fact that, whatever else, or focus on the time I spend with my family to get through the fact of whatever. And if all of them are going sideways at the same time, which thank goodness is, maybe only happened once, all right, I got work to do. And that work really starts with picking the one that I can stabilize most, like take care of my family. And, there's a period where the kids were young and things were chaotic and the one of the business was not doing, the business I was running was not doing well. And I was like, okay, I got to stand, no time for friends. And I was like, I'm going to stabilize family first and pour my time and energy there. And then I'm going to go make sure the job works. And then I'll have time to socialize again and build it back up. That's kind of the way I think about it. It's not a stool that where all three have to be there, or maybe it is, but two legs can be really short. It's still stable. as long as there's something there for me to connect to, I can use that as my true north and build from that.
Those are great thoughts. So just two more hard questions, or I don't know, semi-hard questions, and one really easy one at the end. I like to ask who our guest hero is, or heroes. So can you elaborate on that?
It's not the way I think about the world. I mean, I've been asked that before, and I can truthfully talk about, how my parents are heroes to me and how various people I've admired are heroes to me and this and that. But the truth is, like, every person who I've gotten to know well is such a mix of, positive and negative. And many of the people who are most impressive are some of the biggest mixes when you get to know them. And at the end of the day, I've just kind of like checked out of the notion that anybody should be on a pedestal. And instead just I'm like, what can I learn from these people? And there's some people who I learn from and admire broadly. And I'm like, oh, wow, you balance your work and your family and you balance this and that and the other. There's some people I work from narrowly. I'm like, I do not agree with you on just about anything, but man, you do that thing really well. And so I'm going to learn from that. And so I try to just take the smorgasbord rather than ordering the single entree, and learn from the folks who I work with. I can't say that there's like, the one person who's the central icon that I could point to.
No, that's fair. That's fair. The next one is maybe a better question then. Do you find anybody to be role models for not only yourself, your team members, or maybe even your kids?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the same applies. I can't tell you how many times I found some business role model who I read a biography and this and that, and then I learn a little more, and maybe they're not the person I thought they were. Maybe there's more to them.
Right.
There's a few people I've gotten to know who are absolutely delightful. I was talking about Bob Cialdini, the guy who authored that book, Influence. Boy, the person who literally wrote the book on how to influence people to do things they didn't want to do. You could imagine you'd meet and would be a monster. And no, he's the nicest guy. And like at this first conversation, he's like, I have always been looking for ways to have my, work have a positive influence on the world. And in the world of AI, I've been thinking even more about, now approaching the end of my career, how do I mean, like, he wrote his first book when I was in junior high school. How do I have that? I'm so excited to do this. And he's just been a joy to work with. My daughter was excited about one of his books and like was around during a video call and said hello. And he sent her a signed copy of one of his books, like the nicest guy you'd ever imagine. So no, not everybody lets you down. But in terms of role models, it's much more the people who I run into all the time, who as I was sort of alluding to before, who I'm like, oh, I really want to steal that thing from that person. I'll give you an example. My co-founder, early on, we'd be in heated meetings and I'd be like pounding my fist saying, we should do this, we should do this. And people on the team would be arguing back with me, we should do that. And then Mark, my co-founder, would say, I think we should do this. And everybody would be like, well, okay. And I'm like, wait, what? I mean, I'm not exactly jealous, but he's the CTO. I'm the CTO. That's not how that's supposed to work, right? I'm like, what is even happening there? And I realized that there's kind of a pattern, which is if you are in the mix and arguing, then nobody sees you as the decision maker. You kind of get your choice. You can either be in the mix and arguing, and then if you make the decision, you're pounding it down on the table and everybody, or you can sit back and you can be the moderator and listener, and you can say, okay, like, please tell me this one. I'm listening. Okay, I'm ready to make a decision. And you can, but you can't. Like, they're kind of, they don't quite go together. And that was something I learned from him.
Yeah.
But you take little bits from everybody who you meet.
Yeah, I like that. No, and I enjoyed both of these answers because there's no right or wrong answer to either one. So they're just more for guidance in case anybody wants to take anything from them. The last one's easy. Like I said, what's your favorite food? Do you have any go-tos? I'm from Seattle like you. I love Pagliacci's. I love all the pho places. Do you have anything to share?
We, our vacation spots are the places we like the food best. So we've traveled the world following our stomachs. Everywhere we go, we take cooking classes and eat the local food, and it is impossible to decide. But I will say, in terms of like, what's the one I would, snap my fingers and transport to? Probably go to Vietnam. Probably get a bowl of the local pho.
Oh, no way. That's an amazing answer. There's so many things.
The pho in Seattle is great, but truthfully, that is probably what it would be. We've been twice, once before kids and once with the kids, and both times was epic.
Well, you got to tell us the secret then. I mean, like, what city?
Oh, the secret to truly amazing pho is, I apologize, I can't remember the correct name. They call them penis worms. And if you look at one, you see why. They collect them in baskets. Sasung, that's the Vietnamese. They collect them in baskets. They dry them. It takes a very small, like one dried sasung for an entire giant pot of pho. They have a sweet and umami flavor that they give to the broth, which is generally what the MSG and sugar that they use in sort of like Western or pho mix or whatever replicates. But pho made with sasung is amazing.
Okay.
And hard to get around here. But yeah, if you want to learn more about the secret ingredient, SASUNG, I think is how it's Americanized.
And is that northern, southern? Does it
I
matter?
believe that's the northern style pho.
Okay, interesting.
That's right.
No, this is, just for that answer, I'm glad I reached out for this podcast because I love pho. Like that is, I tell my fiance all the time, like that I could eat that every day. So anyway, all right, awesome.
Yep, it is Sipilunkus nudus, marine worms, sasong. And I believe they're illegal to import to the U.S., so they may have recently found some sort of loophole. But if you want real pho, try a place that makes them with sasong.
Well, who would have thunk? So that's an amazing secret. All right, so we are done. I am so thankful for all these absolutely amazing answers. But one thing I just want to just leave for the listeners, or perhaps other podcasters out there, or people who would like to interview you, in case they want to reach out, in case you might be open to another interview. How do they actually get a hold of you? What's the best way? Honestly, you're a very busy man, so is it best to just contact your executive assistant, or is it should they reach out on LinkedIn?
Just Dan Shapiro at glowforge.com. That easy.
Okay. or tweet on Twitter or whatever, right?
Or yes. Yeah.
Well, Dan, it's been an incredible pleasure getting back in touch, and I really enjoyed today's talk. I swear to God, this is probably one of the more inspirational talks that we had for our listeners. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Brandon. Really a treat.
If your calendar isn't already set, you're missing out on startup wins. Industry leaders, top advisors, and incredible tips await. Come back for future great episodes and entertaining guests, and come back for more insider strategies and incredible stories from the brightest VCs, founders, and operator experts. We're bringing you the best in the business twice a month. Hit that bell and stay winning with Startup Wins. See you soon.